Okay, I was going to review a little bit from last week, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip that and we're going to go ahead and get into new stuff. So today, let's talk about living in two places at once. Living in two places at once. Now, in the natural and the physical, is that possible? I mean, I haven't got my cloning machine done yet. I haven't got my time travel machine finished yet. Uh, other than those crazy phenomenon in the movie stuff, is it possible to live in two places at once? But if you include spiritual dimensions, can you live in more than one place at one time? You can, and we're going to need to learn how to do that. We're going to need to learn how that works and what to think about that, and the reason that we need to live in two places at once. Let's start in Luke 9:23. Luke 9:23. He said to all, if any person wills to come after me, let him deny himself, disown himself, forget, lose sight of himself and his own interests, refuse and give up himself, and take up his cross daily and follow me. Cleave steadfastly to me, conform wholly to my example in living, and if need be, in dying also. Do you think that Jesus was joking or even exaggerating when he said this? I mean, was he trying to be funny? Was he trying to hype you up? Was he trying to, oh yeah, I'm just going to make some crazy statements off the top of my head, and we'll see what y'all do with them. That's not Jesus' character. That's not the way he operates. So did he really intend that you spend daily time at the cross doing something? Do we spend daily time at the cross doing something? True on both counts. Unfortunately, what were we supposed to be doing there? According to this verse, he says you're supposed to come daily to the cross. When you get there, what are you supposed to do? Deny your flesh, okay? What are you saying, Peggy? Die, okay. Watch how this says it. Deny himself, disown himself, forget, lose sight of himself and his own interests. Refuse and give up himself. Oh, yeah, sure. Cheese whiz there. No problem. What else you got for me? No, we tend to just kind of jump over that because we look at that and we're going, well, I don't really want to do that first and foremost. And more importantly than that, even if I did want to, I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how do I do that? Why do I need to do that? What's going on with this? It is safe to say that Jesus established the cross as the continual residence of Suhe. He expected us to take Suhe there on a very regular basis, daily basis, maybe even more so than daily. He expected us to establish the regular residence of Suhe as being the cross, and in this process of denying yourself completely. Other versions of that. Then to everyone he said, if anyone wants to come after me, let him say no to himself, take up his execution stake daily, and keep following me. Somehow the cross sounds better than the execution stake. Why is that? We talked about this before. When you think of the cross, what do you think of? Oh, the beautiful gold and silver necklaces that are all smooth and wonderful, and no. Yes. Yes. No, he didn't. No. And the point of him being up there and all the stuff they did to him was to make an example of him. Don't any of the rest of you get any crazy ideas here about repeating this guy's steps? Whoops. Jesus continued to say to all of them, any of you who want to be my follower must stop thinking about yourself and what you want. You must be willing to carry the cross that is given to you every day for following me. So execution style stake and a cross that's given to you every day for following him. And Jesus said to all the people that were there, a person who wants to be my disciple must not think about himself. He must decide that his own life is not important. Every day he must be like someone who carries his own cross to go and die. Then he may come with me as my disciple. So this one kind of emphasizes the cross isn't even at Golgotha yet. The cross isn't even at the final destination place yet. So it's not just a matter of you getting on a cross that's already in position. You got to carry it to the place to put it in position and then get on it, just like he had to do. Then he spoke to them all. If anyone wants to follow in my footsteps, he must give up all right to himself, carry his cross every day, and keep close behind me. And keep close behind me. So it's not just enough to carry the cross. You've got to do this and still stay close to him in the process. They said, anyone who wants to follow me must put aside his own desires and conveniences and carry his cross with him every day and keep close to me. So not only put aside your desires, but also conveniences. Oh, man. As if this wasn't hard enough already. Now we got to give up our conveniences too. Is he saying that you can't do anything convenient? No. What's he saying when he adds the word convenience there? You can't be governed by it being convenient or not. You can't make your decisions to do things whether it's convenient or not. And so many people do. I'm not going to go do that because it's inconvenient. Well, what is ruling at that moment? Self, your priority, your obsession, your pursuit of convenience, rather than the instructions that you're receiving in that moment to do something different. Then he told them what they could expect for themselves. Anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. Don't run from suffering. Embrace it. Follow me and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding yourself, your true self. Is there anything to be gained from self-help? Is there anything positive in self-help? I'm not going to say there's not. I mean, some people have probably come up with some good stuff. Okay. Why do you think that is?
Well, it doesn't get into your spirit.
Right. Okay. And I was going to go with it. It wasn't originated in the spirit. Oftentimes, some guy got a PhD and thought, okay, I'm going to share my observations about life. Well, unless that person is from a spiritual perspective, whatever they're saying, they're making up. And some of it may be true. Some of it may not be true. And you're going to have to be very careful when you read that stuff about, okay, let's say, eat the hay, spit out the sticks. I don't know. How much of that's going to be sticks? And do we care, do we know if we're not spiritual ourselves? Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way to finding yourself. Now, you're not going to hear that. You're not going to find that book title in the self-help section. The best way you can self-help yourself is self-sacrifice. You got to die to you. No, it's always, well, how can we make you better? Well, the only way to make you better is kill you. I'm not saying any of us have to die physically, but I'm saying there are parts of our nature that have got to die before we get better. One more. Jesus said to all his followers, if you truly desire to be my disciple, you must disown your life completely, embrace my cross as your own, and surrender to my ways. Embrace my cross as your own. What cross did he carry? What was his cross? What was one of the things he put on his cross? The soul. And the soul being in charge, and the soul wanting its way, and the soul getting its way. You got to choose that cross as your own. I choose that to be my daily routine, to be my daily obsession. Our spirit can only live at the empty tomb in victory and power to the extent that our soul remains at, on, or under the cross. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Have you heard the deal? We probably said it here a few times. Jesus died for your victory, but he was raised for your, he died for your sins. He was raised for your victory, or some sort of thing like that. And that's true. Without the resurrection, the cross doesn't mean anything. The power of the cross comes in the fact that Jesus rose again. I'm not dismissing that. So we want to think about the victory and the power of the resurrection side. But somehow we want to get there without going through the cross. I want to skip that whole cross thing and get to this good part with the victory and the power and all the good stuff that comes as a result of this thing. And it doesn't work that way. So I'll say this again. Our spirit can only live at the empty tomb in victory and power to the extent that our soul remains at, on, or under the cross. They're related to each other. Jesus achieved absolute and permanent victory over the exalted soul for us. Our experience of that victory is an adventure in which we follow Christ to the cross every day. All the benefits of our salvation, peace, joy, and every such thing are realized there. Where? At the cross. And also at the tomb. Both places. Part of you dying at the cross, the other part of you living in renewed life continually at the empty tomb. Even though I was raised in a Pentecostal church, I really started growing when I started paying attention to the faith or the Word of Faith movement in 1997 in my life. The Word of Faith started back in the 60s and 70s, but I became affiliated with it in 1997. At that point, I finally realized that it didn't really matter how much I believed that God could do things if I did not understand that he has already done things, and anything that he hadn't already accomplished might still be needed. He was willing and desirous to do for me. It's the difference between I believe God can heal and I believe I'm healed. I believe he's capable. I believe he has the power to do this stuff, but it's a whole different thing when you start embracing I am already healed. I walk from a position, from a place of healing, not trying to get healed. Everything shifts. And most people never make that journey. So I think, thank God, I'm thankful for the Word of Faith that showed me that helped me to make that step, helped me to make that jump in my understanding and grow as a result of it. But I didn't realize until I read this book that the faith message did not include much mention of the cross. They don't talk about it a lot in the Word of Faith camps. Whenever it did come up, it was always past tense, a one-time occurrence. We were grateful for that singular event, but day by day, we lived in Word of Faith at the empty tomb. The price was fully and forever paid at the cross so that resurrection could be an ongoing reward. Have any of you ever had that philosophy? Have any of you ever been taught that? Have you ever walked through part of that? The cross is done, passed. We don't have to do that anymore. Thank God he paid the price for us, so we don't have to. Now we get to live in victory. Now, is that wrong? It's not wrong, but it is incomplete. How do you live in victory? And that's what we're learning. You can't avoid the cross and still live in victory. Because parts of you have got to die. Parts of you has got to be dethroned. Parts of you have got to be reined in so that they don't rule, control, dictate your life to you. Perhaps there was a good reason for this. Many of us who grew up in denominational churches had a different idea about bearing your cross. You ever heard that phrase? Oh, I'm just bearing my cross. It meant you were suffering. Okay, expand on that a little bit. When you heard that phrase, what was that code for?
Something that they felt that was horrible happening in life, and there's walking through it. But there's also a sense of pride because
Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay.
they didn't give Jesus credit for we're supposed to go to the cross and give up that part of our duty that is against Christ. But the cross that Jesus died on was an exchange.
Yes, okay,
Everything exchanged.
yes, okay. Has anybody else ever heard the phrase, I'm just suffering for Jesus, I'm just bearing my cross? And the negativity that was cloaked in that, it was not a victorious statement at all. It was, oh, just look at me, things are really bad in my life, and I don't even want to bother you with all the details, but things are really bad right now. I'm very far removed from victory in any point, any realm of victory. I'm going to be defeated for a while. I'm just sorry. This is just the price I've got to bear. The cross I've got to carry.
You don't say it. That's right. And I'm strong enough to carry this, somebody else is.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned pride. Do you hear the pride in that sort of thing? What you're really saying is, I'm sorry, I don't have a clue how to walk in victory, and I want you to console me in my defeat. But anyway, so on one side of this equation, you've got that ditch. Okay, I'm going to bear my cross just like Jesus did. I'm going to totally lose every engagement. I'm going to totally be defeated at every point where I encounter the victory. And then on the other side, you've got, we never have to go to the cross. All we should do is stay at the tomb. Ditches on both sides. And what do I normally say about ditches on both sides? The truth is somewhere in between the two. And we, to correct for one, we go way to the other extreme, and we get off the truth off the way on the other side. So what is the truth of this deal? Do you have to go to the cross? Yes. To do what? To kill Suhei, to keep him off the throne of your life. And then what do? Then you live in the victory of the tomb. Two places at once. Go ahead.
Give up Suhei without giving up a piece of that personality. That is.
Okay. Right.
Because, I mean, you look at these two guys here, they're two very different. Their
Right.
passions are different. They're a lot alike. Kids start on fishing and they'll get along.
Right.
But there's differences, and God intended for that.
Yes.
And then you got Christy, and they weren't even working. We all, I mean, her passion for where she serves Jesus, and my passion where I serve Jesus. And you think, well, but if I give up who I am, I could do what I.
And don't hear me say give up who you are. Let me hear, think about it in terms of give up my desires. There's a verse that says, he'll give you the desires of your heart. He put some of those desires in there. He gave you specific dreams, specific talents, specific skills, specific personality types. He gave you certain traits that would help you accomplish that desire.
Everybody hates Kyle.
Right. Yes. And he's not saying, I want you to cash in your desire and all of you become robots. That's not all what he's saying. He's saying, I want you to bring those individual characteristics under the authority of the cross. You're not seeking to serve yourself with them. You're trying to figure out how you can glorify me, Jesus, God, with those specific characteristics. So you're not doing it on your own. You're not doing it the way that you want to do it. You're not doing it to bring yourself glory, to bring yourself on. You're doing it because I get glory by seeing you get refreshed, get relaxed, to enjoy life. That brings me pleasure, but I want you to do it correctly so that nobody else gets hurt in the process.
I wrote a testimony on that picture on my Facebook page. but I felt like he told me this is what I wanted you to see.
Right. And there's probably a thought that comes with that. Some sort of insight into authority, some sort of insight into parenting. I don't know. I don't know what kind of realm it would be in, but
It's that God is ultimately.
okay. Right. Okay.
You said something that is truly what it's about. You said, I am different. And that's what God is. He wants us to be different.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wants us to do it. And I know that's where he has me, as you know, like with my book. I mean, initially I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to get a blog, I need YouTube, I need this, I need that, it was just like, going into studying just different areas, and he's like, stop.
Right.
He's like, Mother Teresa. Okay, gotcha. Enough said. Then I heard something else the other day, because what I keep hearing him say is, you are gonna do everything different.
Right.
Nothing that you do is gonna be anything like what others. And so that's where difference just hit me with what you said, because it is where he is, if we will just completely, like you say, dive to our successes, our, and I say dreams, because he gives us, like we say, the desire of our heart and the streets, and he inputs those things in us that we are supposed to walk out, like photography for you, but we just have to hone them in, line them up under God's control. And that was just like even with me with finances and stuff, I'm not working and it's like, I start reading a book on the cost of publishing and all that stuff, and I'm going, I need to find investors, I need this, I need that.
Right. Right.
Stop.
Right.
Focus on what you're meant to do, and gives me my goals, and he's like, you've got your goals, just walk. And he'll be the permission, he'll be whatever it is that he needs to be.
Let's use that as an example. Okay, going into publishing, okay, it costs money to do this, it costs money to do this, and here's the typical way that somebody does this, website, YouTube, whatever. Here's the normal plan. Where are you getting that information? That's one source, yes. The gurus that have done it, and here's how they did it. Does that mean that's how God's going to have you do it? So the art of dying is, okay, God, here is what the world tells me about this. What do you say? I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to be involved in this thing in some capacity, in some form. It may look different. I may get there differently. How do you want me to go about doing this? I'm going to kill my desires, my thoughts, my opinions about how this is supposed to work. And I'm going to let you drive this car. I'm going to let you lead this dream in whatever way you want. Right.
Like, I mean, I keep getting asked, my sister's like, she's read a bunch of my book, and I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
People ask, are you gonna self-publish, are you gonna get a publisher? I don't know. And it's weird to not know.
Yes.
I just know he's told me where to take it specifically, and from there I can walk away with a publisher, I might not. Something might tell me to self-publish. And that part's kind of weird, because I'm like, you wanna know.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I feel like if I think about it too much, I could fall, because I have such maybe a grandeur plan. I have this idea of, oh my gosh, he's telling me to take it there, it could be so big, it could be. And my ex-spouse was like, do you understand that? Like, I do the thing about it.
Right.
Because what if I get there and it's nothing like what I'm imagining
Right.
it's gonna be, and then I'm crushed? So it's better to stay one.
At any point in this process, could you override that direction and, okay, I'm going to force this to happen and we're going this way? What did you do at that point? Who's driving? Who's in charge? Suhei is ruling again. It's not dead at that moment. It's just speaking very loudly and providing direction, control, leadership of your entire being. Yeah. It's not going to die quietly. It's going to continue to raise its ugly head up every so often because, and what's it rooted in? If I decide, okay, God, I'm going to just ignore what you're saying, I'm going to do it my way. What are you saying? I know better than you do. Who gets the glory? I can't trust you. You're taking too long. Your plan isn't good enough. All sorts of different things. What are all of those? Are any of those true? I mean, when you boil them all down, are any of those things true? Not at all. You bought a lie. Where did that lie come from? It didn't come from your spirit. It didn't come from who you really are. It came from something else that is trying to assert itself. Good example. Thank you for bringing it. Do you see it? Do you see how you can, and I'm not saying we should kill I'm saying kill your way of doing it. Not what you're trying to accomplish, but your way of getting there. Your timeline, your plans, I've got to go meet so-and-so because they have this contact. And did God tell you to do that? Did God tell you to go meet them? If he wants you to meet them, I'm sure he can hook that up, or he can specifically say, you need to go talk to so-and-so. But until you've done that, who's driving? Who's in charge? Right. And you actually don't even own it. You're a steward of it. We think, oh, I own it because our head says I have more rights. Well, I own it. Yes. Yeah. You're responsible for it. Are you starting to see it? Are you starting to see how they can both be true at the same time? Okay. Philippians 3, 10 and 11. Philippians 3, 10 and 11. For my determined purpose is that I may know him, that I may progressively become more deeply and intimately acquainted with him, perceiving and recognizing and understanding the wonders of his person more strongly and more clearly, and that I may in that same way come to know the power outflowing from his resurrection, which it exerts over believers. Okay, what's his purpose? What's he saying here? What have we covered so far? My purpose is to know him, with the goal of I want the power that operated in his resurrection to flow more freely in my life. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to get to that place. I'm going to know him. I'm going to get to know him intimately so that that power may flow more frequently. But he goes on. And that I may so share his sufferings as to be continually transformed in spirit into his likeness to his death, in the hope that if possible, I may attain to the spiritual and moral resurrection that lifts me out from among the dead, even while in the body. So what was his plan to get there? I'm going to get to know him. I'm going to get to know him on a deeper and more intimate level than I ever have. And when I do that, I'm going to experience the power of the empty tomb. But I'm going to go there by taking this path, that I may be continually transformed. Is that a one-time event or is that ongoing? Into his spirit, into his likeness, to his death. So what was his plan to get to his stated purpose? I'm going to continually know him in his death, that if possible, I may attain to the spiritual and moral resurrection that lifts me out from among the dead, even when the body. Paul's stated purpose was to attain the spiritual and moral resurrection that would separate him from the dead. Now, why couldn't this be a reference to him going to heaven right after completing this life? Why could not this be him talking about, okay, when I die, I'm going to follow him in death, and when I die in heaven, then all these things are going to happen to me? Why couldn't he be talking about that? There may be continual transformation in heaven. I don't know. I think we're going to grow from glory to glory to glory from now on. So to some extent, yes, but there's a more clear answer. How do we know he's talking about experiencing these things on the earth? Look at the last line. All this to attain the spiritual and moral resurrection that lifts me out from among the dead, even while in this body. Where's that at? That's here. In heaven, you're not even going to have a body for a while. Not until Jesus comes back and your body gets reunited with yourself. So how could all these things be in heaven? Do we care that all these things happen in heaven? Okay, in heaven, one of his goals was, I'm going to experience more fully the power of his resurrection. Is that beneficial in heaven? I don't know, but I don't see any reason that that would be beneficial in heaven. Everybody else is already in that same state when you get there. But would experiencing more of his power be very beneficial here? And how do you get there? I'm going to be like him in his death. I'm going to repeat the pattern that I saw in his death, so that by continually experiencing his death, I get to walk in more of his resurrection power. Go ahead.
I just remember the part of it that talks about Christians being an odd bunch. A real Christian is an odd number. Anyway, he feels supreme love for one he has never seen. Talks
Right.
every day to someone he cannot see. So just all these things that we do, but we do it in faith, you know. And so not that applies, but it's very applicable to both.
We're going to read this verse in some other versions. Pay attention to this idea. Okay, this is happening on his life on the earth, because it doesn't make sense if he was talking about this is going to happen in heaven. What does he do? What's his goal, and how does he go about getting the goal? As we read some of these other versions. Faith knows that the power that's coming back to life, faith knows that the power that his coming back to life gives, and what it means to share his suffering in this way. In what way? Suffering. In this way, in this suffering, I am becoming like him in his death, with the confidence that I'll come back to life from the dead. Now, again, is he talking about heaven? He's not talking about heaven. So what's he saying? The way that I'm going to be distinct on the earth, the way that I'm not going to walk around like the rest of the zombies that have really no life flowing from them. I know I don't believe in zombies, so I'm not talking about a zombie apocalypse, or no. You've used the expression before, yeah, they looked like zombies because they had no energy, they had no life, they had no whatever. Most people are in that state. Most believers, sadly, are in that state. There's nothing different about them from the rest of the world. So for him to say, I'm going to be different, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to experience the life that he had when he came back from the dead. I'm going to do that by sharing in his suffering. In this way, I am becoming continual, ongoing tense, with the confidence that I'll come back to life from the dead. So his goal was, I want more power. I want to be distinct. I want to be different from the rest of the people on the earth. And I'm going to get there by regularly participating in his death. How changed are my ambitions? Now I long to know Christ and the power shown by his resurrection. Now I long to share his sufferings, even to die as he died, so that I may perhaps attain as he did the resurrection from the dead. As he went through this process of sharing in his sufferings, what happened? His ambitions changed. I started this process, and here's my plan. I'm going to regularly participate in his suffering, in his death. And eventually I'm going to have more power coming out of me. And then I've been doing this a while now, and I look back on my life and going, wow, how changed are my ambitions? What had he done? He took Suhei to the cross on a regular basis. And then he looked back on it and goes, okay, not only is there power coming in out of my life, I'm different than everybody else, but wow, my ambitions have changed.
Self-serving.
Yes. Yes. And the only way that that happens is take Suhei to the cross. Yes. Yes.
Continually do it.
Was like that. That's how I was. David didn't always make the right choices.
Right.
But where I see this fitting in with King David is King David always saw God's glory.
Yes.
And that was how it went.
Yes.
Is instead of, because I'm a recognition oriented person, you put a crown on my head, I am all yours. So for me to pray, and I do remember it sometimes, that God is your glory. I don't need the recognition. It's not for me. It's fearful. Fearful. That's hard. That's taking serious.
It is. Yeah. And we haven't talked about that, but I'm sure that that's true, that your journey, your experience of taking Suhei to the cross is going to be different than mine. Because there's going to be different strengths and different even weaknesses, if you want to call them that, of the way Suhei is constructed inside you than it is constructed inside of me. Now I've given up everything else. I've found it to be only way to really know Christ and to experience the mighty power that brought him back to life again and to find out what it means to suffer and to die with him. So whatever it takes, I will be one who lives in the fresh newness of life of those who are alive from the dead. It is. Paul came up with some, I mean, I used to joke as when I was studying grammar in high school that he had run-on sentences like you would not believe. I mean, you put a comma and you just go for 4 more verses, and then another comma, and it's like you have to break this down. You have to tear up sections of it to even figure out what he's talking about by the time you remove all the interrupting phrases. Anyway, yeah, that's a mouthful. All this is talking about coming alive from the dead. Coming alive from the dead. Coming alive from the dead. What's dead? Hopefully your former self and all of its ramifications. The urges, the desires, the plans, the ambitions. Hopefully all of it's dead. I've found the only way to really know him and to experience his mighty power is also to know him in his death. And then he says, okay, he said, I've changed my ambitions. And this version says, I've given up everything else. All that other stuff is in the way. All that other stuff is a distraction. All that other stuff doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. When it's all summed and added up and tallied together, none of the rest of that means anything. Only have I given it all up for the sake of knowing him, the fellowship of his sufferings, and the power of his resurrection. I want to know both. I want to spend time in both places. The very credentials these people are waving around as something special, I'm tearing up and throwing out with the trash, along with everything else I used to take credit for. What is that? Pride, confidence in who I am and all my degrees and all my piece of paper and all my experience and all my legacy and all this stuff that I have done. It's all trash. Doesn't mean anything. Now, am I saying don't do any of that? No, I'm not saying that. There are some places where God will call individuals, and you've got to have those credentials to even get your foot into that door. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying do it because God told you to do it, not because you're trying to find your worth in what you did. Right. And you need to know that too. That I don't care how many letters are after your name, you didn't get there by yourself. You might have worked hard. Thank goodness that you did work hard, but You have had some help along the way. You've had some support. There have been some other people involved in that process along the way so that you can't take all the credit for yourself. Along with everything else I used to take credit for. And why? Because of Christ. Yes, all the things I once thought were so important are gone from my life. Compared to the high privilege of knowing Christ Jesus as my master firsthand, everything I once thought I had going for me is insignificant. Dog dung. Yes, you said that earlier, and I thought, that's going to be funny when we get to that one. I've dumped it all in the trash so that I could embrace Christ and be embraced by him. I didn't want some petty, inferior brand of righteousness that comes from keeping a list of rules when I could get the robust kind that comes from trusting Christ, God's righteousness. I gave up all that inferior stuff. What inferior stuff? Righteousness by the rules, all the credentials. I gave up all that inferior stuff so that I can know Christ personally, experience his resurrection power, be a partner in his suffering, and go all the way with him to death itself. If there was any way to get in on resurrection from the dead, I wanted to do it. So what's he saying? You can't get to the resurrection power without being willing to spend some time at the cross. Jesus had to go through the cross before he could get to the tomb and before he could come out of the tomb. I want to know him. I want to have the same power in my life that raised Jesus from the dead. Do we want that as believers? Do we want to walk that way? I hope so. I hope that that is an ambition of ours. How do we think we're going to get there? He says how to get there. I want to understand and have a share in his sufferings and to be like Christ in his death. Then I may be raised up from among the dead. So the way to get to this thing you desire is to go through death. Regularly, consistently, die to yourself. Put Suhe and all of its trouble on the cross and kill it. And then it has a resurrection of its own that you have to deal with again the next day. And then it keeps coming back to life. It refuses to stay dead. But it gets easier and easier to keep him dead if you keep him in a diminished state of power and you don't feed him. And I continually long to know the wonders of Jesus and to experience the overflowing power of his resurrection working in me. I will be one with him in his sufferings and become like him in his death. Only then will I be able to experience complete oneness with him in the resurrection from the realm of death. The only way to release power and life from our pneuma is to regularly crucify exalted Suhe. Any life resident in our spirit must go through the soul before it's released to the body and then to the world. We'll say that again. Anything that comes from your spirit is useless until it goes through your soul and it ends up being released through your body. I don't see any objections to that, but have we really thought about that process? That you can't just go from your spirit to the outside world. The only way that happens is for your spirit to go through your soul, and then your soul gives your body instructions to do something to release it to the world. Right. 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 Yes. And he wants to use that personality. He gave that's part of his handiwork. It's part of the thing that makes him smile. I made you like this for a reason. I like it. Right. That's trying to be the ruler. It's when that soul is trying to be in charge rather than receive its inputs from something deeper, from something more internal. Let's talk about this idea of things coming from your spirit and then going through your soul. Here's a popular verse, Galatians 5:22 through 23. Now, without reading it, what's that verse about? Does anybody know? No takers? Okay, you'll see it when you read it. But the fruit of the Spirit, the result of his presence within us, is love, unselfish concern for others, joy, inner peace, patience. Now note this, not the ability to wait, but how we act while we're waiting. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Now what is that called? What thing do we get from this verse? The fruit of the Spirit, yes. This is where we get the definition of the components of the fruit of the Spirit. Now, I want you to notice this. I'm not going to take time to talk about it, but I want you to notice. Notice it says fruit of the Spirit is, not fruits of the Spirit are. And yet there are 9 of them listed. So the fruit of the Spirit is 9 things. Not the fruits of the Spirit are 9 things. Why do I make that distinction? There's one fruit of the Spirit. Love that manifests itself in 9 different ways.
Yeah, that's good.
There's only one fruit of the Spirit, love. And it manifests itself through all these other 8 characteristics. Because it didn't say fruits of the Spirit, it said the fruit of the Spirit, one, singular. Now, I'm not going to tell you to do this, but it would be a fun experiment to do. The verses right before this, he lists the work of the flesh. I dare say that each of those works of the flesh is a lack of love in one of its forms. So you could say that all those works of the flesh means something in this love verse doesn't match. I'm deficient in something in the love verse, otherwise I wouldn't do these works of the flesh. So the verses right before it would be an interesting comparison. Another interesting comparison would be 1 Corinthians 13, where he says, love is patient, love is kind. Love holds no records of wrong. Love never provokes. Love never envies. All those things. All of those are also going to be here. Anyway, I'll just throw that out there and you can do with that what you wish. But one fruit of the Spirit, love, manifesting itself in 9 different ways. All right. So you're a spiritual being. Yeah.
Why is it against such things there is no law? What is he saying?
You can't stop them. There's nothing that anybody can say that would make these wrong. There's nothing that anybody could say that against which there would be punishment. There would be recompense.
But why would he say that? I mean, like, what's the mentality against?
I don't know. I don't know what he's specifically addressing there when he says. I have to look at that now that you mentioned it. That's a good question.
I mean, he obviously put that there because someone tried to violate it at one time.
Yes. Or they're thinking, okay, this is Old Testament law like the other laws, which are now, I don't know, in a weird state of enforcement because Jesus fulfilled them all. I don't know. I don't know what he's addressing there. I'll have to study that. Good question.
Those last 6, 7 words.
Right. And maybe one of the other versions would hint at that. I didn't look for that when I was reading them, but that may be a good place to start looking. I don't know. We'll have to pull up some commentaries and the last 6 words. Why did he add the thing against such things there is no law?
What is it added? What is it?
Maybe it'll come to me.
Are these things, are these characteristics of love a product of the soul or of the spirit? How do we know that? The fruit of the Spirit. Okay, good. Yeah, good. Sometimes the questions are easy.
Well, hey, there's not, I mean, sometimes there's plain as the word
Right.
in front of your face, but you don't get.
So these things come from the Spirit. These things are gifts of the Spirit. They operate in your spirit. How will I know, looking at your life, if you are filled with the fruit of the Spirit or not?
have these traits if you are doing either, yeah, these traits are showing up in your, I don't know, I can't find the words to say. it.
You're saying you're on the right path.
Yeah, I just can't find the words to put together. So-
On one hand, you could say, okay, I've got my super spiritual x-ray scanner here, and I'm going to pull that thing up to you and I'm going to measure how many of these things are present inside your spirit. Ding, 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 and it starts taking out and giving me values for how many of these things are in your spirit. Is that how this works? Is that how I know you have these in your spirit? No. How does it work? I see something in your life that is the result of one of these things. Okay, how did they get from your spirit to a place where I could see them? They go through your soul, and then your soul instructs your body to do something or to not do something. Have you ever had an experience where somebody just ticked you off and you wanted to let them have it? Hopefully you didn't. Hopefully you bit your tongue. What had to occur for, in that case, I'm going to say love, patience, self-control, stick any of them in there. For those to be the fruit that you displayed, what had to occur? Your spirit had to put that idea up to your head. You had to think about it for a minute and go, okay, I know I'm supposed to act this way here, so I'm going to act this way. Body, get in line. Here's what we're going to do. Yes. Yes.
Filter that you. My typical knee-jerk reaction is my soul.
Right.
My exalted soul. That's my typical knee-jerk reaction in most situations. Fortunately, it's a process of work, but there are times when the spirit wells up and goes, okay, wait a minute, before you just knee-jerk react in this situation, let's assess this and see, let's let your spirit take over. I wish it happened more frequently.
And it will. As you do it more and more frequently, it becomes easier.
Like you said earlier, you stay in this daily, you do it daily. Thank goodness I'm surrounded by people that speak into these situations daily. They admit look, man, this is where I screwed up. This is what
Right.
his word says about this situation. And, you know, a dangerous prayer, but a great prayer. I hate praying it. No, I shouldn't say that. I pray it not very often, but I do pray this. Lord, I pray for correction.
Right. Okay, good. Wow.
Be careful what you pray for.
Right.
Because that's a straight gut punch to your pride. And believe me, I've been gut punched in there quite a bit lately.
But do you see how, I mean, your tendency is, okay, I'm going at you. You started this fight. Be prepared. Here we go. And you had to make a decision. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to yield to my spirit. I'm going to yield to peace. I'm going to yield to love. I'm going to yield to whatever else. You had to think about it. You had to make a decision. What was your soul's desire? To just, okay, you started this. Here we go. But to get the spiritual thing out of your body into the world, it has to go through your soul. You have to make a decision about it. And then your soul has to say, okay, if that's what you want to do, I yield to you. Body, shut up. Put your hands in your pocket. Don't hit them. Turn around and walk away. Your soul is governing your body on what you do next, what you say next. But that information came from the spirit. Go ahead.
Thing that also my thought goes to, you know, you're going to be in a similar situation with something that you have, and you can pray ahead of time for to be in the spirit.
And what are you really praying for at that point? That God really improve your filter.
Yes, exactly.
Either make it so that I've got more time for my filter to do its thing before I do something dumb, or my filter's so strong that it wasn't even really a question. But I still had to make that decision from something that started in my spirit. and something that went against the desires of the soul that's normally ruling my life. Let's read the rest of this passage. So Galatians 5:22-26. But God's Spirit causes us to live a different way. We love other people. We're happy and we have peace in our minds. We are patient, kind, and good. People can trust us to do what's right. We respect other people and we respect ourselves properly. God's Spirit helps us to live that way. There's no law that says these things are wrong. Verse 24. We belong to Christ. As a result, we no longer obey our wrong human thoughts. We stop doing the bad things that our thought want us to do. It's like we have killed those thoughts on the cross. It's like God's Spirit that gives us life. So we must let God's Spirit lead us in how we live. We must not become proud. We must not be jealous of each other so that we cause trouble to one another. So even in the midst of the fruit of the Spirit, what's he talking about? My soul, before any of those fruits can come out, my soul had to die. It had to visit the cross. It had to spend some time at the cross, removing itself from ruling my life. Here's another one. Well, what happens when we live God's way? He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Now think about that for a second. We sometimes get mixed up when we start striving for the fruit to operate in your life. It's supposed to happen like an orchard. Does the apple tree have to stress and fret and worry and concern itself with what sort of fruit is coming off of it? What does it do? It produces apples because it's an apple tree. You produce the fruit of the Spirit because you are a fruit of the Spirit. You are a seed of the Spirit. You are a child of the Spirit. So you don't have to fret. You don't have to get all concerned with producing the fruit. What you do have to be concerned with is setting the whole thing on fire by running your mouth. Things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, a conviction that basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. Now, I love that wording on the fruit of the Spirit, how all those are a little different than the way that you might have seen them before. It's a good study. 23. Legalism is helpless in bringing this about. It only gets in the way. Okay, there's an answer to one of your questions, Chris. Against such things there is no law. He says here in this version, legalism is helpless in bringing this all about. It only gets in the way. Right. Love out. Right. 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 That's good. Legalism is helpless in bringing this about. It only gets in the way. Among those who belong to Christ, everything connected with getting our own way and mindlessly responding to what everyone else calls necessities is killed off for good, crucified. Let's read that again. Everything connected with getting our own way and mindlessly responding to what everyone else calls necessities is killed off for good, crucified. Since this is the kind of life we've chosen, the life of the Spirit, let us make sure that we do not just hold it as an idea in our heads or a sentiment in our hearts, but work out its implications in every detail of our lives. That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. Okay, stop right there. Comparing. Where does that originate? Who's governing that activity? Your soul. It's not a spirit activity. There's no benefit unless you're comparing yourself with Jesus. There's no benefit for comparison. There's another verse that says, comparing yourselves with yourselves is not wise. What's that mean? You can always find somebody better than you. You can always find somebody worse than you. Depends on which way you want to slant that scale. Compare yourself with Jesus, you'll always find yourself coming up short. Some things you need to work on, some things you need to change. But you shouldn't do comparison with one another. That's purely a soulish activity and it has no value and no merit here. That means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. Each of us is an original. And that refers to what you were talking about. God's not going to kill your originality. That's one of the things that makes him smile. That's one of the things that he enjoys. He's not going to kill your personality. He gave that to you for a reason. But it's to be brought under his authority. It's to be brought under his control so that he can use that to the maximum to achieve what he's wanting to achieve with you through it. If your soul was not willing to allow the release of love from your spirit, would that fruit that's in your spirit come out? Okay, I'm having this encounter with a guy and the guy cusses me out. If my soul was not willing to operate in love, could the love come out anyway? No, it's not going to happen. My soul is in charge at that point. Whichever it says, whatever it directs is how I'm going to respond to that situation. If it doesn't come out, yes, to Christ, his purposes, his desire, his way. If it doesn't come out, so you've got this fruit in you, and for whatever reason, you decide, okay, I'm not letting that out today. Is it beneficial for you to have it? Who's it helping? If it's in you, and you decide, oh, I'm not, he didn't deserve me to be nice to him today. He cussed me out and he shouldn't have done that. Here we go. I'm just going to give him a piece of my mind. Your mind. There we go again.
Yeah.
Anyway. So is it even beneficial for you to have any of this stuff if your soul is going to stop it from coming out? How do we make sure that your soul is willing to release it when it needs to release it? You keep him dead. You keep him weak. You keep him powerless. You keep him off the throne, off of the rulership position of your heart. I've heard it said, and I probably said myself, that Jesus went to the cross so that we wouldn't have to. That is true in a very literal and physical sense. Jesus paid the penalty so that we wouldn't have to do it. It's a good thing that he did because there's nothing we could possibly do to pay that debt. Without him, we were done before we even got started. From this perspective, there's absolutely no reason for us to ever go to the cross. But was the sin debt that Jesus took care of that we couldn't take care of, was that the only thing that happened at the cross? There was all sorts of exchanges, yes.
Sin, poverty.
Right, okay. Christianity itself is called the Great Exchange, if you want to call it that, or the Great Confession, in other words. So as you go through this process, were there parts of what Jesus did on the cross that we do not need to repeat? Yes. We couldn't repeat them if we had to. We could not pay for our sins. But there are also parts of the cross that Jesus expects us to do on a regular basis. And those things involve killing our own desires, killing our own will, killing our own ambitions, killing the way we're going to do things, and making them align with what he wants to do.